So I am Kara Tucker with the Kenton County Public Library. Today is Friday, July 27th, 2018. I will be interviewing Orville H. Bryant Jr. at the Covington branch of the Kenton County Public Library in Covington, Kentucky. The other person attending the interview is our videographer, Mike Bloom, also of the Kenton County Public Library. This interview is being conducted for the Kenton County Public Library's Veterans Oral History Project in conjunction with the Library of Congress's Veterans History Project. So, good afternoon, Mr. Bryant. Could you state your full name, birth date, branch of service, highest rank you attained, and your dates of service?
Name's Orville H. Bryant Jr. I'm no longer a junior since I am the last of the Bryants, but I've already forgot the question.
Your birth date?
Oh, my birthday is October the 12th, 1931.
Okay. And your branch of service?
I served 4 years in the U.S. Navy during the Korean War.
What was your highest rank attained, and what were the dates of service to?
My highest rate was the E6, which was a petty officer first class in the Navy.
Okay. And what were your dates of service? You said it was around during the Korean War?
I was October the 3rd of 51 to September the 30th of 55.
All right.
In the regular Navy and then into the reserve.
Oh, okay. So you continued on. Awesome. Okay, so we're going to do some before your service questions. So tell me about where were you born?
I was born in the house at 413 Crescent Avenue in Covington, Kentucky.
Wow. What were your parents' names and what were their occupations?
My parents' name, my mother was Frances Claire Bryant, and my father was Orville H. Bryant, the same. And occupation?
Yeah, what do they do for a living?
My mother was a housemaid, housewoman, and my father worked for the Montgomery Coal Company, which was locally in Covington, Kentucky.
Very nice. Do you have any siblings?
I am the last of the Bryants. I had two sisters, but they have passed away.
What were their names?
It was Dorothy and Mary Ann. Dorothy was 4 years younger than me, and Mary Ann was 12 years younger than me.
Oh, so the brother in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned you were born on Crescent Avenue. Did you grow up on Crescent Avenue as well?
Grew up on Crescent Avenue until the Korean War came along, and I had to go into service then.
What was it like growing up in that part of Covington at that time?
It was nice. It was the poor working area for people like that. The house we lived in was very simple, but back then the heat was you burned coal. Nothing modern like today on that. No ice box in the wintertime. You had a window ice box. It stuck out the window and you put the food in there.
Oh, wow. Very different.
Or if you were lucky, you had an ice box, and every 2 days the iceman came down the street and you bought a block of ice from him.
Nice. Where did you go to school when you were living in Crescent Avenue?
I went to school at 3rd District in the elementary school, which is at 5th and right down there on 5th Street, and ended up in Holmes High School. Went to Carlisle Elementary School, which is up there, and then ended up and graduated from Holmes High School in 1955. I'm sorry, 1950. Yeah.
All right. So were you active in athletics, or did you do any kind of extracurricular activities in high school and school?
I primarily went out for a track for a while. I ended up with a knee problem, and that put that out. Literally, I was working at a really early age. Of 14, I was ushering at the old Liberty Madison Theaters over here.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Back then, the going rate pay per hour was 33 cents.
Wow. Did you work after school or on weekends?
Worked after school to close most nights, and ended up working almost 40 hours a week, and went to school besides.
What did you like about working that job?
Well, I got to meet a lot of people, but that was it. You stood on your feed a lot while you ushered people, and then the shows did not stop and start over. They just continually ran
Oh, so did you see things over and over again?
over and over again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned you worked at the theater during that time. So did you have any other job experience before you entered?
Yes, I worked for it was a printing company. It put out a local Sunday paper for ads, and I can't remember the name, but their office was right over here on Scott Street, very close.
Okay.
And printed them on a Saturday and delivered them early Sunday morning. Started at 3 o'clock.
Oh, wow, that's early.
Yeah,
When was that when you worked there?
that was probably in 48 and 49.
Okay, so that was afterward. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to move on into your early service information questions. So we know you are a Korean War veteran and you served in the Navy. Were you drafted or did you enlist?
The Korean War started in June of 1950, and I knew I was of draft age because I had to register. And about February of 51, I said, I'm not going to fool around. I went over to take the physical and had the flu, and they flunked me and sent me home. Said, go away, you got the flu.
Sure.
But we'll keep in touch with you if whatever comes up. So about August, my sister called me and said, there's someone from the Navy looking for you. He wants you to call. I left the phone number. So I called him. He said, I'm looking at your draft induction papers for the Army to report to Fort Knox. If you get over here within 2 days and pass the physical, I'll take you in the Navy.
Oh.
So I signed up for 4 years and went in the Navy.
So did you you preferred going into the Navy even though you'd signed up to do the Army, or was there a reason why you went with that opportunity?
I'm gonna be truthful with you. I didn't. I worked out a lot in cold weather, and I didn't like laying out in a muddy foxhole. I know the Navy.
Sure.
You had a warm bunk every night, and you had warm food, and sometimes it was edible. So
That's a great point.
on that end of it. I also had an uncle that was in the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
And he was on the aircraft carrier Hornet in '42 when they bombed Tokyo.
Oh, wow, okay. So you had veterans in your family, too.
Well, that's the only one. And from what I can tell, I have not found any of the Bryant family that's had to do military service, maybe during the Civil War,
Mm-hmm.
but not in World War I or anything like that. My father, for World War II, would be of draft age, and they'll say, okay, we're going to take this age of 25, for example. Well,
Mm-hmm.
then he would turn 26.
Oh, convenient.
So every time they upped it, he got another year older, and besides that, he had 3 children, see, on that. But back up too, was the oldest of the Bryants.
Okay.
My 2 sisters were younger than me, so.
So did hearing about your uncle's experience in the Navy kind of inspire your decision?
Yeah, well, I've been a history buff pretty much anyway, and I've followed all kinds of stuff like that.
Okay.
I follow all kinds of history, stay involved.
Nice. All right. So where did you go to basic training, and can you tell me about the experience and the training?
We left out of the Union Terminal at Cincinnati in a Pullman sleeper car, 50 of us, and they shipped us to San Diego, California. Did my basic training down there of 12 weeks, and from there was assigned to a ship and spent just several weeks on that, and then they permanently signed me to the ship that I spent my most time on, and we left out for Korea. And that was January of '52.
That's a fast turnaround. So you trained for 12 weeks, is that right?
Well, no, well, yeah, for me, 12 weeks got basic training,
Oh,
yeah.
what kind of things did you have to do in basic training?
You did marching. They shipped us out for a month out in the desert out there. We lived out there in barracks, but you did rifle training, marching training, and all kinds of things that would be involved with if someone got hurt, first aid and things like that. Yes.
So did you have any extra training that was specifically related to the fact that you were in the Navy? Did you have to do any kind of training as far as the whole, water element?
Well, when we went back to San Diego, after a month, went back to San Diego, yeah, we was out boat rowing and stuff like that.
Had you been on boats very much before then?
And no. Yeah. On the old Coney Island riverboat, that was about it.
Nice. Was it hard to get used to, or did you get used to it pretty quickly?
I got used to it very quickly. A lot of people were seasick, but I never got seasick in my 4 years.
That's a pretty good track record, then,
And
I
we
would
had
say.
some rough weather, and one out there, literally rode out the tail ends of several typhoons in the Sea of Japan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, rough. You'd see water in our escort ships with us would, one minute you'd see them, and the next minute they'd be down in the trough, and you wouldn't see them.
Oh, wow.
That's how rough on the tails of a typhoon, and you'll see some the waves and stuff in some of the photographs that I gave you.
That's amazing. That sounds intense.
Yeah.
All right. So you kind of talked about it a little bit, but can you tell me more about your first assignment once you were finished with training? Where were you going? What were you doing? You kind of talked about it a little bit.
Everybody that went in the Navy came out with a seaman apprentice rating, and then when you graduated, you was made a seaman, second class like. I was involved with repairs and stuff like that, and I told them that I wanted to change to the engineering divisions. So they took me and gave me some testing and stuff, and I had to look at different machinery, and then I had to come back and describe it to them. And I got my new rating, which was a fireman, they called fireman, which was just 3 little stripes. And that's what I went to, and then from there on, you trained on that. Like the division I was in, which was the repair division, was also the fireman and the repairs and anything that had to be done on the ship to keep it be done on it if it was hit or whatever like that. So from there, then my next rate would have made me taking a test and all the training and fleet-wide competitive. I was made petty officer 3rd class, and again it was a rating with the stripe like that with the eagle on it.
Mm-hmm.
And after a year, I made the 2nd class.
Hey.
And after another year, I made 1st class. And I got a lot of ribbon on that because I made petty officer 1st class in 42 months. And now, right now, people I've talked to, it's been in the Navy, to make my rating takes 8 years.
That's a fast track.
Yeah, well, it was a wartime rating back then, so I don't know what on that particular end. But that's what we was on that.
So you said you went from repairs to engineering. What was that something that was just sort of the next step, or were you interested in learning more and doing what the engineer did instead?
I work with my hand. If you was in the seaman, you was in the deck force, you manned the big guns, you did all the chipping and painting and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
Well, if it was broken, I fixed it.
Definitely a different capacity for sure.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
My name's Mike. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm going to point this down a little more towards you. There you
Okay.
go.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. So when we talked a little bit before on the phone, you said you were operated 3 miles off the coast of Japan. Is that correct? On a refueling ship?
Not off the Japan, we picked up the fuel. We left the U.S. and 21 days later we ended up in Sasebo, Japan.
Oh, okay, I see.
Now I went back and kind of figured this. It's 6,500 miles from Long Beach, California to Sasebo, Japan,
Wow.
and our top speed was about 12 miles an hour
That's crawling.
on that.
How long did that take?
22 days.
Wow.
22 days. We went in the Sasebo. We reprovisioned the ship with milk and eggs and stuff. Cause in 22 days, you then You put on what you had, and if you ran out, you ran out. And normally ran out of milk at 7 days, and then you went to powdered milk. And powdered eggs, and all kinds of stuff like that particular end of it. From there, we went out to what we call the battle line out there, which was 3 miles out, but then we were the only one of 2 tankers that they had that was able to get into service. And if we got hit, we was in trouble because we had the fuel, roughly 3 million gallons
Wow.
of fuel. So they pulled us 20 miles out to where a shell battery shooting couldn't get you on that. But still, we had the airplanes that could be flown after you, and floating mines. Every now and then they would blow up a mine floating close to us.
Oh, wow.
Well, you fuel the fleet with everything, or if it floated, we fueled it. We also made fresh water for the small coastal ships, because we had big distilling plant on there, made all of our fresh water from seawater. We also hauled the mail. Any ship that came in port went back out, hauled mail. They was the mailman. And then you transferred it to the ships that came along on that end of it. It's just constantly 20 days out, load of fuel, back in to Sasebo, which was down on the southern end of Japan. The commercial tankers from Saudi Arabia and that brought the fuel to there, and they offloaded it. During World War II, the American forces could never find where the Japanese storage tanks was for their fuel down there. Well, when the war was over with, they got in there, they found out they had hollowed out the mountains, and the tanks were hollowed out of the mountains. So that's where our fuel was stored. They pumped it in there. We'd go in and tie up, and they gravity flew it back in and fill our tanks all up again. Then a day and a half to 2 days, and another 20 days out.
So for the day and a half to 2 days, did you get to leave the ship at all and go to land?
Every 20 days, you got a half a day off.
What'd you do on your half day off?
Well, went over to the enlisted man club and had a beer and whatever.
Well, that sounds fun.
Yeah, look for a steak. So after a while, after doing this, for several months or so, go to enlisted men's club for breakfast, have steak and eggs and all that, which you didn't get aboard the ship.
Did you make close friends with the people that you were serving with on your boat, or?
Somewhat. Most of the time when you was transferred to a ship, you spent your 4 years on that ship. Well, I was on 5 different ships.
I see.
So I made it for, but you leave and whatever. Never did run into only ran into one person that was out of the whole group that when we first went to San Diego from Cincinnati. So just didn't follow through. Come back and you got a family, and family becomes first.
Sure. Did you have any downtime at all when you were actually out at sea on those days, or was it
No,
on the clock?
A lot of times you was 4 hours on and 4 hours off.
Oh,
You
wow.
always had to watch. Soon as they hit within 200 miles roughly of Japan, they manned all the guns and everything. Then they went to readiness if something happened. And North Korea never had much of an Air Force, and the Air Force that they did have is what you're hearing the word right now was Russian. The Russian flew their fighter planes and things, but real fast we took control of the seas, the air over there, and that took care of that. You didn't have to worry about that. I just worried about the floating mines. On the bow of the ship, there was always a gunner up there, a sharpshooter, and if he saw that mine out so far, he could hit just one of those spurs on there. They had these spurs that stick out on it that would blow it up, and that's what he did.
Oh, so they detonated at a safe distance? Wow.
Yeah.
What was that like? Did you see that happen a lot?
All of a sudden, you hear a big explosion and a big column of water go up.
Oh, wow.
Because you got to remember, the steel on the side of those ships was not much more thicker than that.
Mm-hmm.
Quarter inch, a little over a half inch thick.
I think I'd buy that guy several beers on his off day.
Yeah. Well, there were no off days on ship. when the wintertime, we had to make sure that oil was pumpable because it had to be heated. So
Was
we
it
had
was it cold at the time there, or?
Oh, yeah, you could see that, when it was, ashore and at the Chosen Reservoir and it was 65 below zero.
Wow.
It got cold out there. You didn't get down, you got down to zero or something like that. I'm not absolutely sure what the temperature was down to. But zero oil in those tanks, you couldn't pump it, it's like tar. So we had steam lines that run down through there. But we had to constantly, my 4 on and 4 off on that was one of them that monitored it to make sure we held the temperature about 100, 110 degrees. So you could pump it relatively then through the big hoses over to whoever's receiving it.
Wow.
So these were oilers. Did they call them oilers?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever hear about the Mississauga, the one that blew up in World War II? I think that's what it was called, the Mississauga, and it was hit by a Japanese suicide torpedo.
Well, there was a lot of them.
Okay.
I'm not positive on that. You'll see where one of our sister tankers, the Estabula, had an explosion aboard, but they caused that themselves, and there was several people killed.
Were you nearby on the other ship when that happened?
It was in the harbor at Sasebo.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you would hear the legends back then of other ships that had these explosions.
Yes.
How would that change the way you did your job?
Well, you could only smoke in certain places, and that's the other thing. Being in the engineering force, if I wanted to smoke, I went down into the boiler room, because flames are down there shooting fire and burning in the oil, on that. So you could smoke down there, but up on deck you couldn't smoke. So, because the forward part of the ship contained aviation fuel. The back part of the ship, most of all the tanks, had the real heavy, what we call NSFO4, which was bunker fuel.
So the fuel that you had not only powered the ships, but also the aircraft.
I'm sorry?
So the fuel you had not only powered the ships, but also the aircraft that were landing on some of them.
On the
it sounds
aircraft
like.
carriers,
Okay.
yeah. Well, the aircraft carriers themselves was powered by the black stuff. The airplanes and the helicopters was with the aviation fuel.
I see. Okay.
And some of the smaller ships got diesel fuel.
Okay.
So right now, the Navy right now, nobody uses that. They use that high fuel like it's just below what the airplanes use and all that.
So you guys are carrying fuel and food and mail. How was it communicating with home? How did you do that, or keep in touch with family?
With family? Mm-hmm. Well, just letters. If you get back in and 20 days in, it'd be mail waiting for you. Or if you're out there and mail comes in, and it's like I said, any ships that's in harbor port coming out to you, they carried mail. And movies. We had movies every night. So
there were areas on the ship where you could kind of do some recreation then?
they did it in the area where food service was.
Okay.
And we had some of the things. We had an ice cream machine. We had a Coke machine on that. So you had some of that. And he had a ship store where you could buy cigarettes. Cigarettes was 7 cents a pack.
Wow.
On that. 75 cents a carton. All brands. You buy, your toothpaste, your soap and stuff like that. They had snacks, candy bars and things like that, whatever. They was even selling little cans of potted meat and things like that. That's what I said. Sometimes when the food wasn't edible, you had some of this to fill in with. So.
Did you ever get jealous of guys on other ships? Did you ever think, oh, I wish I was on a submarine or an aircraft carrier, or were you happy with what you were doing?
I would have liked to have been on an aircraft carrier because it was much better, but we had about roughly, if I remember right, somewhere around 350 on our ship, where the aircraft carriers had 4,000 on them. The new aircraft carriers have 6,000 or more.
And they made a huge difference back in World War II. Those were considered war-winning weapons.
Yes, yes.
And I imagine with all those planes taking off, that must be a lot of action going on.
Well, where it is, even right now, they say they're operational 24 hours a day. Mm-hmm. The one that was in the Med when there was problems out there. Mm-hmm. Well, which there still is. So, yes.
Can we ask about where you're at with this Korea stuff today?
Well, I think it was a waste of time. Luckily, I've had several friends that graduated from school with my wife. My wife graduated 1 year after me at 51 from Taiwan. And one of them was wounded, sent back to Japan, and got well and back to duty. And next day, when he got back to duty, he got killed on that. It's things like that. I've had several friends that they've already passed away. Don't know. The average age that they're saying now of the Korean veterans is 87, and I'm turning 87 soon. So
We appreciate you coming down.
appreciate this.
What's your most, if you could pick one, what would be your most distinctive memory of your service during the wartime?
Well, I remember I liked Japan. I saw Japan. They were still, when we first got there, they were still under occupation. They hadn't been received. MacArthur had not let them, or the U.S. government had not given them their independence yet on that. The Japanese people were, it's kind of hard to think, but the landscape there with the sea, the big mountain off from sea and things like that, the saipans and the fishermen and all that stuff out there was something new. The war around Japan still, there was no war to them. The boats were out fishing and everything until you got further out to the Korean coast. Then that's where you went to full alert.
To sing that sounds like it was really an experience then.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like, or how do you think, if you could say, the experience changed you, or did it in any way?
Well, you look at it, I think it gave me more responsibility. It learned me a good trade. And I come back and spent 44 years in the trade. I was a pipe fitter and a welder. And spent that time with the Montgomery Coal Company, which in turn became the Rusk Heating and Air Conditioning Company.
Okay.
44 years with them, but the Montgomery Coal Company was owned by the Rusk family. So they just split it. They had a fuel oil division, a coal division, and the heating division. So.
Do you remember the day when your service ended?
Yes. 4 days before my service ended, and I got discharged at Long Beach, California, they just went ashore and went over to the receiving station over there. But I still had to send shore patrol. The shore patrol policeman when the Navy's in town.
Okay.
So I had to do that 1 or 2 days. And I got ribbed by a chief petty officer, which would have been one rate higher above me.
Uh-oh.
He said, I don't know how you made petty officer first class in that time. It took me 7 years. And I told him, I didn't know, didn't you use your smarts or whatever? And then he got mad.
Uh-oh.
He said something. I said, don't bother me. I'm out of here tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
So,
What was it like to come home?
yeah, it's funny. I had really, when I went into service, I had a hard time. My mother died in 1951. And I went in, this is June, and I went into service in October.
Oh, wow.
And that left my father with my 2 young sisters. And there's no way you could get a deferment. Back then you had to go. That left him with that. But luckily, several years later, he remarried. And my oldest sister of the 2, she got married, and that left my youngest sister. And I ended up raising her when I got married. So.
A lot of family stuff when you got back
Yeah.
then. Did you go straight into the workforce when you got back?
I went to work 2 days later.
Wow.
Well, when I came home on leave several times, and on several times I worked, because I was home a month on leave, and all my buddies that I grew up high school and stuff with, they was in the service, nobody was there. So I used my training at the company down there to help them train their employees. They didn't know how to solder pipe or anything like that, and that's what I was, a pipe fitter.
Oh, wow. So what you did on the boat helped you
Yeah.
back on at home.
So if you would really look at my time with the company, I really started when I was about 14 or 15 in the coal division, and then less the in school and stuff, worked summers and weekends and things like that. More like especially Saturdays, and then went into service for the 4 years, and then come home with them, and then come back and went right back to work for them.
So you weren't released from service immediately after you got back. You did some more work, you said, and continued on with it as well. So you were still part of the Navy then
Yes.
too? Okay.
Yeah, always needed some spending money. So,
Good
so
to have that.
they would give the check to my father, and he would send it to me,
Oh, wow.
mail it to me. So whatever.
Did you have a great pride being in the Navy? I know that a lot of people love the big capital ships, and there's kind of a glory about being in the Navy, right?
It was very much.
Mm-hmm.
Would you hear when I told you about my uncle?
No,
Was on
sir.
the aircraft carrier Arnold when they bombed Tokyo in '52.
Okay.
That kind of pushed it up.
Mm-hmm.
He was the only one he was a Pino. My mother's maiden name was Pino.
Okay.
And he's the only Pino that I know of that had to do military service, and I'm the only Bryant I know of that had to do military service. So,
So you heard the stories of the Doolittle Raiders and the Battle of Midway and stuff like that had an influence on you growing up?
I've read all those books, every one of them that's available out at the Kenton Lands Library out there.
Mm-hmm.
And everything I'm reading up on is World War II and Korea.
Okay.
So I've probably I hadn't done much reading, but in the last 2 months, I'm in my 4th book right now. So,
Nice. Are you active with any veterans organizations?
yes, I am. I am president of the Democratic Veterans of Northern Kentucky. We are not political. My main concern is veterans. I don't ask them if they're whatever they belong to, if they're an atheist or whatever they believe. And every 2 months, I go over to Cincinnati. There's a group, there's 2 or 3 of us, 4 of us, and I put on a doings for them, and I got a doings coming in 2 weeks from Sunday over on Vine Street over there at the VA. And we do horse racing for them and have snacks for them, and I get all kinds of supplies. The government does not furnish some of their stuff.
Sure.
I get them toothpaste, toothbrushes, body wash, and stuff like that. Socks, always getting them socks. I've taken over probably 500 pair of socks for them, because a lot of them over there have got diabetes and everything, and they just don't hold up very good.
Sure.
We was going to do this for 5 years. I'm just getting ready to sign up for the 14th year.
Wow. So it sounds like veterans take care of
Yes,
each other for a long time.
I enjoy my concern is veterans. And like I said, I don't ask what they're affiliated with. If they need something, I get a lot of people calling me about what they can do if they need veterans help. And I go to the VA. I go to the Bellevue VA for my medicals. But most of my medical I handle on the economy, because I got a supplement and got Medicare and that stuff. So on that.
Did your ships ever service the big battleships? I know
Yes,
the battleships didn't get any bigger than what they were back then.
No, you'll see a picture of it. I spent 19 months on Guam on a floating dry dock,
Okay.
and she's got all the pictures of my
A
album
lot of
down.
good stuff.
Perfect.
We lifted the Wisconsin
Okay.
up out of the water, 70,000 tons.
And that's a big Iowa class sucker.
Yeah,
Those are the ones that push the sides on the Panama Canal.
yeah.
I know that there's only a few feet on each side when they would go through the Panama Canal, and that would cut off thousands of miles that they would have to go otherwise around the peninsula there.
I have been through the Panama Canal.
Okay.
What was that like?
Well, we was on a cruise, not doing the Navy.
Okay.
But no, we've been through there, and that was very enjoyable on that.
So it sounds like you enjoyed being on water then, if you've
Yeah.
done it since.
There was kind of an arms race going on with these battleships, right? Because the Japanese and Germans built ones that were even bigger than the ones that we had.
The Japanese, the biggest one they built weighed probably close to 100,000 tons.
Sure, was it the Yamato or the Musashi, one of those two?
Yeah.
I know they had two really big ones, and both the German big ones got sunk too.
Well, the Bismarck and them, that was the German ones. The problem was with them, they didn't have the fuel to run them. We cut off the fuel out there, and that was it.
Okay.
It's the only reason the Japanese went on the war party out there to get down into the Dutch East Indies and stuff to get the oil that was down there.
Okay.
Because when they started the war, I think they only had probably a 6-month supply of oil.
And that in the Philippines, didn't they pull a lot of supplies out of the Philippines too?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I know the Germans actually manufactured a lot of their fuel for the Air Force. They did the synthetic fuel.
From coal.
Yeah, but I guess it was a really expensive, hard process to do, but
Well, and they also did it from potatoes.
really, I didn't know that.
You get alcohol out of potatoes, whatever you do.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
They were
pretty
smart. The Germans had enough, of the people with the know-how on that they could do it. And Germany had as much coal, more coal than Kentucky has, or the area through here.
Yeah.
So,
And
I know
they're
you said-
trained, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I know you said you read a lot on history. Do you ever read historical kind of books on what you experienced, and
Oh, yeah.
what's it like? Does it seem like it's very accurate to what you read, or what's your impression of it when you do
well,
that?
it's everything. I've read everything on Pearl Harbor.
Mm-hmm.
And they really had there's a book out that's in the library out there. It's called The Second Pearl Harbor, where wasn't caused by the Japanese, but it was caused by our own mistake in the upper parts of Pearl Harbor. A lot of ships had an explosion and blew up all the other ships. And a lot of people was killed, which they kind of covered up at the time. So,
Wow.
Who was the real threat back then? I know that that I've read that German submarines were off the coast, down in the Gulf of Mexico and off of the East Coast, on patrol out there looking to sink ships.
I just finished one on the German submarines.
Okay.
One of the books, and they get back that far, but it was crazy. The German submarines was patrolling on the East Coast here, and they would not put the lights out in New York City or anything like that, so they just laid down a silhouette at the tankers going up and down, or the convoys, and just sat there and knocked them off. One had sat there and knocked, and they had a heck of a time involved. Finally, to get involved, that they would turn the lights off, and they said, well, that's hurting business.
Well.
Was that all up and down, all the cities on the coast, all lit up like mad. And here they're out there fighting, and they see the explosions and see the ships burning and everything. Those guys really had it rough. If you read about the German
Sure.
submariner guys,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Well, they had some more submarines in the pipeline that were very, very dangerous, but they couldn't get to develop them because it was so late in the war, and they got overwhelmed, and a lot of these factories that they were doing this stuff got bombed.
Well, they had the snorkel too, where they could charge their engines submerged underway. But the ships were dirty, the fumes and everything was horrible on that.
I know that a lot of NASA was because of the German rocket engineer, von Braun,
Yeah.
and all of his people that they got.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have made it to the moon and all that good stuff if it wasn't for getting him and his German rocket engineer counterparts.
Correct. So,
Well, let's look at some reflection questions. How has military service impacted your feelings about war and the military in general?
well, the last wars we've had, except World War II, we just walk away from. They go in there and they try to get an end to it, which they don't. They end up signing an armistice, or it goes on and on and on. They're in there because they got an alliance with somebody. The same way with Vietnam. Vietnam was a war it should never been. And it's a shame those guys, I came back from the war. Nobody was here to welcome me back or anything like that from Korea. And it was even worse for the guys coming back from Vietnam. People would spit on them and everything like that. It was bad. So all Vietnam veterans that I run across on that, they get a hand salute from me on that. I really had it rough, they did. I don't think I had it rough. I think I had an easy life. You put a lot of hours in, but that was part of the deal. What else could you do when you're 500 or 1,000, 2,000 miles away from anything on the water? You either read, you slept, did your 4 hours on and your 4 hours off. You watched the movie at night, and that was it. One of the funniest things that happened, though, on the ship, they stored all the potatoes and onions outside.
Okay.
Because if you got a rotten potato, man, it stinks up everything like that. So we're having lunch one day, and the guy, I'm sitting there and I'm peeling an onion. And he said, "What is that?" I said, "That's an onion." "Well, what's an onion?" I said, "It's good. It's a flavoring for whatever on that. You use it for cooking and everything like that." And I said, we had sandwiches, so I sliced it up and put it on a sandwich. And they said, "Can I try a piece of that?" I said, "Yeah." "Where'd you get it at?" I said, "It's up on deck up there in that storage bin up there with the potatoes and the onions." Well, they had to put a lock on it after that because everybody wanted onions to put on their sandwiches, and they ran out of onions on that. So at least it spiced up, made the food that sometime edible more edible
Sure.
on that.
Did you ever get sick of being on the water when you got out of the service?
I never got
you...
sick. I never got sick or anything.
Okay.
So
Now, did you ever want to be on a boat after that, or it was different if it was your boat or a buddy's boat compared to the Navy?
well, I don't know if I wanted to be on a riverboat or anything, but we've been on numerous cruises, the wife and I,
Okay.
and enjoyed that. So you're going from here to here to here.
Mm-hmm.
So
Do you have any other memories, kind of like the onion one, that you'd like to share, or related to being on the boat, or any other anecdotes?
the first time in Hawaii and Islands, I was able to walk down and see the Pink Hotel down there. That was I think it was by the Matsu Lines. I may be wrong on the name of it, but that's the only hotel that was there at that time. Walked down Wakatui Beach. There wasn't no construction that's there now. You can't hardly get down there for the high rises and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we had stopped through there. First time I saw the Arizona, we saw the Arizona when it just barely sticking out of the water. Not the memorial it is now, but that was in '52. We stopped off at Pearl Harbor for a replenishment and went on. So
Are there any other countries that you stopped at other than the ones you mentioned?
we've been there, was part of the blockade is Formosa, which is Taiwan now,
Okay.
down there, to keep the Chinese army wanted to invade China. And they also was trying to, MacArthur was trying to get them to come up and fight in Korea up there and put a stop to that because they didn't want something else happening down there. And we did put into Hong Kong for several days for rest and recreation, and then back up to Korea.
You made a number of stops around then.
How was your stop in Hong Kong?
That was good. That's the first time I ever ate fried green tomatoes.
Of all places.
They took us on a tour and went around, and it's heartfelt, I mean, to see how the people lived out there. Our ship tied up in the harbor, and we'd have lunch or have dinner, and what you didn't eat, you threw in the trash and they threw away. Their people would come aboard ship and get the stuff that we didn't eat, offer you trays to feed their people with.
Wow.
That's how bad it was out there. Because all the people then in Hong Kong was like all of the people was trying to get in from the Far East now into Germany and everything. Well, they was leaving communist China to get to Hong Kong, see? And they come in there and they was an overabundance of refugees and stuff like that. So they took the food that you didn't eat and cleaned it up and fed the people with it, their people. And it just, one sampan after another, people living on them and what have you.
That sounds like it left an impression, yeah.
I never got ashore in Korea
Okay.
on that. We did go into port, and we got into the port at Wonsan and fueled in a ship that was coming back, a hospital ship, and then back out of there and back out to do what we was doing. So
Did it kind of feel any different when you got a little bit closer to Korea as far as danger, or
well,
did you have to worry
they
about
was
more
always
things?
on the lookout for swimmers coming out that could put a bomb to you and blow you up.
You said swimmers? What are those?
Would have been frogmen, or whether the Korean frogmen or whatever.
So people literally swimming?
Yes.
Wow. Did you see that very
Never
often?
saw any of it, but
Okay.
they was always on guard. They had the guys with the guns on them.
I see.
And that's part of the fore. There was always somebody on manning something or doing something or watching something.
About how many of you were on your boats generally?
Roughly, if I remember, around 350.
Okay. Sounds like a lot of different jobs to do for a lot of people.
Well, we touched on it before, but I'm sure that if a torpedo or an explosive hit the right part of the ship, you could sink it in just a matter of minutes.
Oh, you blow up. There's enough fumes there. If you ever seen any movies with the tankers burning,
Yeah.
that's it.
I've seen the one, the Mississauga in World War II,
Yeah.
where the Japanese torpedo got it, and the Japanese thought that they had blown up 6 or 7 ships, but it was just the one oiler that had exploded.
An oiler had about 20 separate tanks on it, but any one of those tanks you hit was full. And when that explosion went, it ruptured the others. So then the oil floating, and if you abandon ship, you abandon ship in that. We did have an accident out there. An aircraft carrier collided with us.
Oh, wow.
And the first time the captain put the word out, stand by the abandoned ship. Well, if we were fully loaded, which would meant far down as the water, we would sink with a full load on. If we would have been half loaded, the aircraft carrier would have split us open. So that's what I said. Remember, that steel was very thin
Oh, sure.
on that.
Did you actually have to abandon the ship?
No,
Oh,
just stand by. It tore down the hoses, the black hoses that I showed you. It was going over to the
oh
ship.
yeah.
Tore down a gun mount up out of the deck and twisted it. Are you familiar with oxygen and acetylene bottles?
No, sir.
Oxygen and acetylene bottle, a green bottle has oxygen for welding or stuff. Well, that's under maybe several thousand pounds compressed pressure in there. When they hit them, they literally smashed them
Oh, wow.
on the side, because we had them stored up on deck along the side.
Have to replenish those, I guess, pretty quick after that.
Cut them loose and threw them over the side, and nothing you can
Wow.
do with them.
So a ship that big probably had a bulbous bow, right?
Oh, yeah.
These big things on the front of the ship that actually make it go faster by diverting the water around it.
Yeah, well, and then the flight deck hanging over too, see, over the edge of it. Because the ship's here and the flight deck's out like this, so that put us back to the States for repairs.
How long did that take?
Well, it took us 21 days to get to get San Pedro, or to get Mare Allen Naval Shipyard up above San Francisco. And then we got repaired and repainted and refinished and everything, and Liberty's leave. And then in September, back to Korea again.
Did you always come home when you had leave?
Yes.
How about how long would that last for?
To get home by train took 2.5 days. Didn't have enough money to fly then.
Sure.
And when I got more of a rate and got more money to fly, you get home in a day then. So,
What did you, so you came home, what did you do when you were on leave usually? You said most of your friends were all serving as well, so they weren't,
well, I
they
told
weren't
you, I
home.
went down to the company and worked
Oh,
some.
right, to make extra.
Yeah,
You
so
mentioned
on
that, yeah.
that.
Okay, so once you made it home, you mentioned a little bit earlier what it was like to come back and how different you saw it was from people who served in Vietnam. What was it like getting back into civilian life? And did you do that right away?
Well, yes, I did it right away because within several days home, I went back to work, went to work for the company. So I took a lot off of my mind. At least I was doing something for 8 hours on that. So,
So, and you said you supported or helped support your sister and your family too. Did you
Well,
start a family of your own?
I didn't get. We got married in 1956.
Okay.
My wife and I. My father had remarried, and with his new wife and my young sister did not get along good.
I see.
So I bought a house before we got married on the GI Bill. Because we got married on December the 31st in 56. And then I brought my younger sister out to live with us. And got her through, she got her graduated through, at Lloyd High School.
Okay.
And then she went on her own on that. And then that, we lived in Ellesmere for about 6.5 years and had 2 family there. And then I had bought the property in Villa Hills in 62. And in 63, I had a house built. And we're still living in the same house.
Oh, wow. That's
that.
great.
And raised 2 more children there. So I ended up with 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. So
What are their names? What are their names?
I have Greg, who is just turned 60. I have Sue, my teacher daughter from Dixie High School. She's a school teacher. She is 56. I have my daughter Peggy, which is 54. And I have a son that's 48. So my oldest son has never married. My school teaching daughter has 2 sons. My daughter, who lives in Louisville, has 1 son. And my youngest son has 4 children, of which one of them is a set of twins. And he lives in out just past St. Louis.
Oh, okay.
So.
Do you share your military experience with them, or do they ask questions about it, or?
Not too. My school teaching daughter was married to an Army guy, and they spent 4 years in Germany.
Oh, okay.
He was with the military force over there. So she's been a teacher, so she taught. My 2 daughters graduated from Hanover, down in Hanover, Indiana.
Okay.
Outside of Madison?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nice little school. 1,400 students, all that. She got her teaching degree and taught in Kentucky, and then went to Louisiana and got her master's degree at LSU.
Oh, nice.
And got married and went to Germany and taught in Germany. And we used to fly over there all the time because my next daughter, Peggy, worked for American Airlines, so we got a lot of free passes.
That's a perk.
On that. So we'd go over there and visit. And then he got transferred back to Colorado Springs, where she taught out there, and then to Washington at the Pentagon, and she taught in Manassas Park Air. And then they separated, and she moved back here 15 years ago, and she's been back teaching at Dixie, where she graduated from.
It sounds like you guys make your way around the world a lot.
Yeah. And she lives close. My other younger daughter lives down Louisville, which is probably 70 minutes away down that area. So.
I remember as a kid, it used to be a big thing when you fly. You dress up, you put on nice clothes, and it would be a big ordeal. But now people, they act like they're going to the pool when they're flying.
Well, if you're flying, you still have to dress up somewhat, because you was always on standby. And several times we got the last flight out of Germany coming this way back on that.
Oh, yeah. Given that
So if you're stuck over, you had to get a hotel and everything like that. Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to add about whether it be your life or military service or anything we might have missed or you want to elaborate on?
No, like I said, we've been in the same house since 63. I have built a big addition on the back of the house, which I did myself. I had not only being a pipe fitter and a welder, very much welder, because everything went to soldering pipe and stuff like that, and threaded pipe.
Okay.
On that end of it, I've been a master electrician,
Oh, wow.
so I did electrical work and that. With enough involvement, I could build. I know how to put a wall up. I know how much height it's supposed to be. I know how much space is supposed to be here and how much you have to put the electric plugs
Mm-hmm.
and all that stuff, because that's what I did for 44 years with the company on that end of it. I was at the company, I was manager for 14 years of the service division, and they had a reorganization, and I went into sales and spent the rest of the time in sales and then retired. So, but I still did consulting for other companies, and my motto is stay busy. I play volleyball every Monday night. I played 4 games of volleyball Monday night. Not as good as I used to,
That's great.
but involvement, keep going.
I think you mentioned you do a lot of volunteer work beyond not only your work with veterans. You do other things in the community too, right?
I do that. I'm very active in church. I'm an elder in our church, the Presbyterian Church. And with my work down at the Action Ministry Food Pantry, run the warehouse down there pretty much on Thursdays and Fridays, receiving and shipping on that. And any veteran I know of that's in trouble, need food, I can get it for him with no problem. I can snap my fingers. A lot of the people down there that started the organization are veterans, and they said, if you got a veteran who needs something, take it.
Mm-hmm.
All I gotta do is sign it out, weigh it. Everything that comes in down there's gotta be weighed, everything that goes out's gotta be weighed for the records. They don't ask anything, I take whatever I need, all the bath supplies and stuff like that veterans are not furnished. I've gotten extra food for veterans. It's in hard times and stuff like that. Just get it and give it to them. So,
It sounds like you've been supplying people with things a lot throughout, since your service started all the way through your volunteer work now.
Yeah.
Do you really like that kind of element of
Yeah.
making sure people get what they need?
I told my children in high school, they all graduated from Dixie Heights High School, if you're involved, I will be involved. I've been a PTA president, I've been PTO president, I've been band booster president.
Wow.
I've been chairman of Kent County Citizens for Better Schools.
Mm-hmm.
I ran the concession stand for the band at Dixie for 8 years and stuff like that. Stay busy.
I think you're doing that for sure.
I think my health is 90%. My only thing I worry about is, and that's not too much of a worry, I have it under control. I have AFib, and I'm only on three medicines.
Mm-hmm.
One to regulate the heart rate and blood pressure, which I don't have high blood pressure. I always got low blood pressure.
Nice.
Eat like mad and don't put on any weight. When I came out of the Navy, on my discharge papers, which you have down there, you see I weighed 180. Right now, today, I weighed 168.
Wow.
Good for you. It sounds like you've led a heck of a life.
I've enjoyed life very good. I have a very good wife. It's very good. Well, luckily, I told her, you run the house and I'll bring the money in. Run the house and raise the kids, and I will help on that. I will bring the money in to what I can do. And I've worked numerous jobs.
How did you meet your wife?
She graduated a year from me.
Oh, okay, right.
It's a funny story. She sat behind me in the algebra class at
Okay.
Holmes
Mm-hmm.
on that. And years later, she was talking afterwards. She said, you know, you was very smart. And I said, why did you say that? She said, well, I had all this trouble with algebra and you helped me. And I said, yeah. Let me tell you something. I flunked it the year before and I had taken over. It's the only class I failed in 4 years.
Well, better be lucky than good sometimes.
On
right?
that. So,
All in the review.
and it's funny. Her father was a Kroger manager, store manager, and she worked for them. And they literally lived where the revolving restaurant is.
Oh, sure.
Well, she was born up on Crescent Avenue.
What to say? That's right by Crescent. Yeah.
Yeah, from there, but then they was raised there where the house was Elm Street,
Okay. Sure.
on that end of it. And my uncle worked for them, one of my
Okay.
uncles. And I was talking to him, was out there visiting with them and everything, and he said, "Are you dating anybody?" And I said, "No." He said, "You remember Betty Schneider?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Why don't you give her a call?" And I called her, and we started going together and got married on December the 31st. Been married ever since.
Oh, that's great.
So,
All right. Well, if there's not, is there anything else you'd like to share?
no, I
Otherwise,
think
we can-
whatever.
We
Okay.
appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Yeah.